I have to splice together videos. So there is such a mitzias that a person could be alive, and even though you don't see him breathing. So he says the shehu inyan pikuach nefesh en lo chosh davracha. You don't have to be choishish for it. You're not mechuyev to poke. But if you know that, but if you did it, it's not dark yamar. He says, "In came Misha Rai they electric the cardigan. She yeshu ezechias. How you often say look a shuv feel row lomer shumes. If you could see through instruments that the heart is beating, so you can't say that this person is that the majority of people once they stop breathing are dead, because now that you know that the heart's beating, he's not no longer part of that rove, because now he's like a new Metzias. It could be that the majority of people that have a heartbeat survive long term. And the person could be alive even though he's not breathing. Just like there was a person who stopped breathing and still, you see it as a mitzvah, so somebody could stop breathing and still live. He's saying, since now that we know through the electrocardiogram that it's possible that he's still alive, so you can't operate anymore on the basis of the normally there's a very extreme rove. The people that are not breathing are not alive. But here you know that he's not part of that because you know that he has a heart. 99.99% of the people that are not breathing there's no heartbeat. They're dead. But here there's a very small. But if you know that the heart's beating, so then you no longer have 99%. Maybe it's only 80%, or maybe it's only, he says maybe it's not even a row. Maybe 60% of people with a heartbeat are still alive, even though he's not breathing. So once you know that the person is heart's beating, so it's no longer a rove. So therefore, you're mechuyev to save the person. So what I don't understand is, but how do you know that he's not from the 99%? 99.99, only because of the electrocardiogram. So why don't we say that the person's tiny was? It's not nearly nine. You can't see it. It's only with this instrumentation that until recently nobody was able to determine that. So what's the answer? Why isn't it? Why isn't it still an issue of ein nearly nine? Because we should. Just like we don't care that there's bugs, even though we see them with a microscope, so why should we care if there's an electrocardiogram? We should discount it. And if Ramosha means that because, I don't know what he means. I don't know. What do you people say? What does Ramosha mean? I don't understand what he means.
We're dealing with pikuach nefesh in Ramosha.
Yeah, but the Ramosha doesn't say that. He has a whole shtickle Torah that since you see that it's possible for a person to be alive even though they're not breathing, so normally we say it's 1 in a million. But here, if you see there's a heartbeat, it's no longer 1 in a million. But that's what I'm asking.
He doesn't have to say it's pikuach nefesh. It clearly is.
It is. I know it is. But why do you? But you don't have to worry about things that are remote. So.
That's what it says. You don't have to worry about it, but if you know it,
then it's no.
But you only know about it from electronic instruments that are not nearly naim. If we don't deal with ain't nearly naim, so
it goes back to maybe if you actually were staring at a microscope and looking at it, maybe are you allowed to drink it if you're staring at it?
Yeah, sure.
You're looking at it.
Yeah, even if you see it.
I would argue that that's because the Torah, it's the chefza. The Torah never assered a chefza that's not near a layinayim. But that doesn't mean that in any other context where you have something that's not near a layinayim, you.
Okay, but then you're saying the Ramesh didn't need a whole shtickle Torah here about how that there's no longer a rove. You should just say that ain't nearly layinayim is only about with food, and here we're not dealing with food. We're dealing with whether the person is dead or alive. So as long as you can tell that he's alive, he's alive.
Would there be a difference in near the matzah?
I don't know. Ramesh doesn't see that's not Ramesh's issue. He says that there's no longer a rove. Usually there's a ruba de ruba, and he says avahu rachak afil muta. Normally, if you stop breathing, there's a tiny percentage of people that are still alive, so you could discount it.
But within that percentage of people who have stopped breathing and are still alive, most of them survive.
Normally stop breathing means that they're not alive.
I mean, it's a small
It's
number.
only here because there's a heartbeat. When there's a heartbeat, then the person is a different category. Then
Doesn't the definition of Nirlanayim change with technology?
That's what it's.
that's the whole question. If you'll say it changes, then you
But,
should
you
be
know,
able.
but
They shouldn't be
maybe
able to
something that's
breathe.
more readily
If
available.
you have a
like
way of getting along without breathing, it's
well,
a
I'm saying
problem.
like a defibrillator that is so common today.
You'll have to. Everybody have to wear masks now.
There you go, so there.
But a
'Cause there's
defibrillator,
bugs in
which-
the air.
which is so common today, as opposed to a microscope, which is still not so common.
Then Ramosha should have
thought-
said that. The Ramosha should say that this is common, so therefore it's not called Golden Erlinayim. It's different than bugs that you
I
need a
have a
microscope.
question with the whole premise there. I mean, you can, just because he stopped breathing, you can still tell if there's a heartbeat. And you don't necessarily need an EKG to tell you that.
I don't. So that's the Matthias that Ramosh is working with.
I know,
That
I
it's
have
a
a
very
question with
faint
the
heartbeat.
Matthias.
You're right. So normal, you could sometimes you could feel the person's pulse. It must be. There was a
this
very
way to knowing there's a heartbeat.
no. So he's talking
Not
about where.
knowing if it's a regular or an
Okay, I hear. He's talking about a case where it's a very faint heartbeat, where you wouldn't be able, without the electrocardiogram, you
You
wouldn't
wouldn't be
know.
able to know.
Wouldn't
You
say.
would think the person was dead.
Okay, look, these are the two tshuvas. I don't understand exactly either one because of my Saran is in me, not in anybody else. So, but these are the tshuvas that they refer to in this discussion about whether a stem cell is called Ein Nirlanayim. I still think the svara that I said before is a decent svara, that if you see the result, then you don't call it Ein Nirlanayim. So if you put a stem cell in some serum, and then 2 days later you come back and there's a rib steak, so you can't call that Ein Nirlanayim.
Like, oh, you want to eat that?
Or a pork chop or whatever it is, however they do it. Okay, that's the heter of Ein Nirlanayim. Then the next heter is that it's bottle. So Rabbi Gersten, who grew up in Highland Park, his father is Joel Gersten. He is a super duper big Talmud Chacham, and I work very closely with him. I sit next to him in the OU. He's the Safra Dedaina in the OU. That means that he records all the psakim from Rabbi Belsky when Rabbi Belsky was alive and Rabbi Schechter. So we have now about 10,000 psakim in writing. The one that preceded him was Yaakov Mintz. David Mintz. So Edgemont Road is a good place to live.
Represented.
And before that was David Cohn, who used to work for the OU. Now then he went to the CRC. He was in Chicago. So but Ravelli has been with the OU I think at least 15 years. So he wrote up one of the considerations about it's the second booklet that I gave you on page 3. So I'll read it to you. What?
No, not-
Yeah, the one that says on top, Rabbi Gersten, page 3.
That's in Rabbi Ganesh. Okay.
No, not Rabbi Yak. No, you're in the wrong booklet. That booklet, yeah. That
Got it.
booklet.
Sorry.
So he says the next issue is that stem cell, because there was a previous article that somebody wrote. He says stem cells are introduced into broth that supports the growth process. The stem cells are less than 1 part in 60. In the solution, will be batal b'shishim unless we view the stem cells as a maimid. In order to have a status of maimid, an ingredient must be a primary catalyst for the transformation. However, there are two. So that's the reason why you wouldn't say bittul on the stem cells, because it's a maimid. It's the one. Something that's a maimid means something that's critical for whatever is taking place is not batal because it's choshev. So he says, but however, if there's 2 or more ingredients that are catalysts, each ingredient will be ineffective. We refer to this as zev garam, and not kosher maimid will be batal. If you have 2 things that are maimid, then you don't say that it's a davar ha'maimid because it needs the support of the other thing. And here, if you wouldn't have the serum together with the cells, it wouldn't grow. So he says, for example, if not kosher rennet is used to produce cheese, the cheese is not kosher even if the rennet is batal b'shishim, since the creation of the cheese is attributable to the non-kosher rennet. However, if both kosher and non-kosher rennet are used to make cheese, and neither one is sufficient, so then it's zev zagarim. If you need to have 2 rennets, and you have one rennet from a kosher animal, one rennet from a non-kosher animal, so zev zagarim, so then the non-kosher rennet would be batal. So how does it relate to culture meat? The next paragraph. So he says cells do not grow on their own and will not be reproduced until they're induced to do so by growth factors. In addition, they must be fed the proper balance of feedstock and nutrients. One would assume that cells are viewed as zev zagarim, since without the other ingredients, the cells are incapable of growth and division, and the the culture meats should be permissible. As such, even the cells would be extracted from non-kosher source, the final product would be kosher b'diavad. Although this seems logical, in truth, the argument is flawed, and the conclusion is not true. Why? Here's the reason why. So that's the thing. The question is, do you say Zev Zegarim, that they need you? It's not the cells alone can't do it by themselves. They have to have other nutrients and ingredients. So he quotes Rav Chaim Ozer Grzinski, who was the Posek Hador in the pre World War II in the Litvische world. He writes that we follow the ruling of Minchas Baruch that in order to be considered Zev Zegarim, the two garments must do the same action. For example, if bread is fermented with sourdough from truma and sourdough from chulin, and the truma alone is incapable of causing the dough to rise, the truma would be batal. That would be a case of Zev Zegarim, where you have two types of sourdough is seor, and if it comes from truma, so it's aser. But if you have some of the sourdough is from truma, and some from chulin, and you need both, so then it would be Zev Zegarim. However, if the only sourdough that's used is truma, but the sourdough will be ineffective unless other ingredients are added to promote fermentation, this is not considered Zev Zegarim. We view the sourdough of truma as an independent maimed. Possibly the logic is that although these are two garmim, each one acts independently, therefore each garim is a full-fledged maimed. The same argument applies with culture meat as well. Although growth factors and nutrients are necessary to trigger the cell's growth, they do not accomplish the same function as the cells. The cells grow while the growth factors and nutrients support growth. This cannot be considered as a garment. Because the cells keep on multiplying, but the other stuff is just it's like booster shots. So therefore, you can't say zev zegar. That's the argument. That therefore it's not. Therefore, it would not be batal because it's a davar maimed, and it's not called davar zev zegarim because the other supporting ingredients are supporting, but they're not the same. They're not functioning the same as the maimed. Then he wrote a last paragraph. I called him to ask him. I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. He's smarter than I am, so he understood it. But he wrote it. But I'm not sure what he means in the last paragraph. Okay, so that's the second heter. So we have Ein Nayim and we have Maimed. So Ein Nayim they say it doesn't work because of Shlomo Zalman's tshuva. Whatever the meaning of Shlomo Zalman's tshuva is. Batal doesn't work because it's a davar hamaimed and you don't say zev zegarim. So now the next consideration is that it's not royal achila. Now we'll go to the other booklet. It's not royal achila.
Can you speak of something that's so small you can't see it as being in a royal achila?
Yeah, because even if you had a lot of them, it would be ein royal achila. Okay, there's a tshuva from Moshe, but we'll skip the tshuva. Let's go straight. It's ein royal achila. So there's a yisaid. L'chara, it's not since it's not royal achila. So you don't need bittul. It would be. It's not. There's no isur. So it's not royal achila. Even though the rest of the product is royal achila, but the rest of the product is if the isur is not royal achila, so then it's the principle of yotzim min heter is mutter is mutter. Yotzim min isur is aser. So if the stem cell is not isur, so then you don't care that the stem cell multiplied and produced other things. It's heter. So if it's heter, it shouldn't be a problem. So there's a principle that is articulated by the Chavas Das, is Rav Yaakov Miglisa. He's the author of the Sidus Chayshim Mishpat. So on page 3, he says,
Which page 3?
page 3 in the booklet, and on the front page says Rabbi Genak.
It says Yud Gimel on top.
Yeah, Yud Gimel on top. It says Chavas Das. He says, Gabe Chametz she'aser pas she'ifsha. The Parakeh Ovrim. The Gemara says that if you have dough that spoiled and turned sour, then it's still aser. Even ashen nisam echila. You know when you want to have dough rise. So one way is you could buy the Fleischmann's yeast that they sell in the store, but that's not real yeast. It's not even chametz. It's maybe kidneys. even though it's yeast. People think all yeast is chametz. The real yeast that's chametz is sourdough, and sourdough is you let dough sit out and it turns sour, and then it's packed full of bacteria that will create the fermentation process. Fermentation it takes place through bacteria. The same way that alcohol ferments, you put in some bugs to cause the fermentation. So that's how fermentation works. So sourdough, when the Torah says you shouldn't eat seor or machmesetz, there's chametz and there's seor. Seor is sourdough. So the Gemara says that and sourdough is really not royal achila. You wouldn't eat it. It's totally off its taste. And that's why, by the way, different bakeries, their challahs have different tastes. The reason is because they're starting with different sourdoughs, and they guard their sourdoughs. That's like their whole the whole secret to their success is the sourdough. They'll kill you if you try to steal it from them. And some of the sourdoughs could be 100 years old because they use it. What they do is with the sourdough is after they put it in, then they take off a piece of the dough. They make a new dough. They put in sourdough so it should ferment, and then they take off a piece of that dough and let it turn into sourdough. So that because once the bugs are in there, the bugs keep on reproducing the bacteria. So but the Gemara says that if you have a piece of dough that is rotten, Adam, who nonetheless it's also why? Who mitam shekasher rav sham mishum deroy lechametz bo isos acheros. V'chol shadayim roy leechol o lesakim bo ochel acherim v'omel kach aser midaraisa. He says that if you let dough turn sour and now it's not roy lachila, it's still aser because you could use it to ferment as the rising agent, the yeast, so to speak, for making challah. So anything that you could use as an ingredient to cause an effect is not. There's no heter of this samachila. Anything that's usable to bring about a certain reaction. So Rabbi Gersten wrote an article. If you look at page 4, he wrote this up in an article. We have a magazine called Labasi Ella Orer. It's like every few weeks Rabbi Gersten puts out a Labasi Ella Orer where he takes a topic and he develops it. I actually was the one that suggested that he should already. His predecessor, David Cohn, started doing it. So he says, although in general, an Isser, page 4, which is Nifsal Mechilos Adam, is permitted, this does not apply to Seor, which the Torah specifically forbids to eat it, or on Pesach, even though it's Nifsal. Sourdough, you can't eat sourdough. So Post can point out that the prohibited status of Seor is not limited to Pesach. The Mishnah applies the Dinim B'Seor to Truma and Kalei Kerem. Okay. The post unfortunately explained that since seor can be used as an ingredient to ferment other foods, it maintains the food status even though it's inedible. Something that could be used, and then he quotes the Chavos Das that I just showed you. So if you look at the bottom of the page, he says Rav Chaim Ozer Gazinski in the Achiezer offers a different approach. He maintains that an ingredient which is omed lekach has an intended is also even if it's nifso lekelev. But if it's not a mikach, even if it's theoretically usable, it's not us. It makes a distinction between whether, if that's the intention to use it for another food, or it's not. In contrast, nifsal achilas, he has a chiddush. If it's nifsal achilas, the difference between nifsal achilas kalev and nifsal achilas adam. If it's nifsal achilas adam, it's also so long as it possibly can use. So, or which is oimid to be used for bread, even if it's nifsal kalev. Okay, this is really not that important. But next part, based on this formulation, Rav Chaim also rules that strong spices and concentrated vinegar, which are nifsal lekelev, remain also because they are omdin lekach, to be used in food. So the Rabbi Belsky used to give an example of coffee. Rabbi Belsky said coffee, nobody could eat coffee. So why don't you say coffee is nifsal machila? You know, we make an issue about on Pesach. You shouldn't buy certain coffees because the especially decaffeinated coffee, because they use to decaffeinate it. Some of the coffees they use I forget what it's called, ethyl something or another, which is ethyl is alcohol, ethyl acetate, I think. So that's the way they filter out the caffeine. So, but why don't you say the coffee is not edible? It's not really achila. So it's nifsum achila. So the answer is because since it's aimed to be used for coffee, so you can't consider it nifsum achila. So he says in the next paragraph, he says other examples. Achiaz uses his presentation to permit animal remnant that is extracted from the stomach of an nevego through a process that involves strong chemicals which render and the render the extract maintains that the nevego is omit for eating and not to be processed into rennet. Therefore, once it is nifsal kelv, is permitted. So Rav Chaim Moshe says that rennet, you extract it from the stomach lining, but the stomach lining is not. That's not what its intended purpose is, to make it into rennet. And he says the Min Chassidus disagrees. Min Chassidus is Dayan Weiss, and he disagrees with the Achiez's assertion that the vega is not made to be turned into rennet. He argues that if a piece of the vega was deliberately converted into rennet, it would be prohibited since the piece of meat is omed l'kach. We do not look at how the vega is used in general, but rather how this particular piece of the vega will be utilized. Even if the process involves making this a kelv, the issue will remain since it's omed l'kach. This is the view of Rabbi Belsky Zal and Rabbi Schachter. Therefore, almost every ingredient which is made from Isser will remain Usser, so no matter how Nifsal becomes, since the Pegima was done intentionally to enhance the ingredient. That's the rule. If you made an ingredient in order to be used, even though it's helping you prepare food, so that it's not called Nifsa Machila. And that's why gelatin, in a lot of products, it'll say kosher gelatin. Kosher gelatin means it's treifah gelatin, but the person who's giving the extra feels that it's kosher because it's nifsa me'achila. That's one of the reasons. But he says the Rambam writes that it's for him to eat hides or bones of the nevela. If the hides would spoil until they became nifsa l'kelv, the isser should be removed. However, Minchas Yitzchak, in consonance with his position above, writes if the bones or hides are deliberately made pogam as a step in converting them into gelatin, they remain prohibited, even though it's nifsa l'kelv, because these items are omulkach. The reason why gelatin, you don't have the heter that it's nifsa machila. The gelatin, they use a lot of chemicals in order to extract the gelatin from the hide, and it's definitely not. It's a powder. It's not. You can't eat it. It's not edible. But since its intended use is to use it to function as gelatin, so therefore there's no heter that it's nifsa achila. The medicines, the OU's position and the CRC and others is you could any pill that's not chewable you could take on Pesach, because they're nifsa machila. If you need it for a medicinal reason, so then it's you could use it on Pesach. If you need it for if it's a vitamin, Rabbi Belsky said that Rabbi Moshe held that there's no heter in nifsa achila because it's achshavei, because since you want to use it as a vitamin, so it's chashuv for you. The Gemara says that if something's nifsa achila, but if you eat it, let's say you took a piece of bread on Pesach and you burned it, you burned the bread before Pesach, and now you decide, I love charcoaly bread, and you sit down and you eat it, this is Rabbanan, because it's achshavei, because for you it's chashuv. You're meshugana, but it doesn't matter. But for you it's chashuv, so therefore it's also but vitamins. Rabbi Belsky made a distinction. We said Ramosha said that medicine there's no achshavei, because you're not taking the medicine for its food value. You're taking it as a refuah, so therefore there's no achshavei. But if you're taking a vitamin to promote, you're taking like a food. It has nutrients in it, so it's like a food. So that's called achshavei. So, but on Pesach, because of this concept, so you can take any pill that's for a medical condition. There's no achshavei, and you can take it on Pesach. So why don't you say the same thing? That since you're using it for your health, so therefore there's no heter of nifsa machila. So why is it different than this rule of the Chavastas and everybody? That there's something that is used as an ingredient will remain usher since it was made to affect a certain. It's being used in food preparation. So the answer is because it's not being used in food preparations. It's a standalone. you have a pill, so the pill's going to stay a pill. So even though it's used for refuah, but that's not called food use. So therefore, there's no achshaveh. But if you, so he's saying that so therefore, when it comes to the stem cells, he's not talking about stem cells, but they make this application that stem cells for the cultured meat, you don't have a heter of nisa achil because your whole intention is to use it to produce cultured meat. Maybe Rav Chaim Ozer would disagree because Rav Chaim Ozer says if something is nisa achilas kelev, a piece of meat is that's why he says rennet is mutter because meat is not oimel to be used as rennet. So even though you decided at some point to turn it into rennet, that's not called that it's oimel kach. So the same thing might be with stem cells. It's not oimel kach to be used to produce cultured meat. What?
Why would a stem cell? Why would you not say stem cell? It's not only the kach.
Because most people don't use stem cells. It's like a new modern thing that.
But it's extracted for that purpose.
Yes, and the same thing with the rennet. It was extracted for that purpose, but he says since the veil itself before you extracted it was not oimel kach. So he doesn't hold that. That's called. You can't change it if it's not oimel kach before you start patching with it. It's not called oimel kach. Okay, but the other person don't agree with Rav Chaim Ozer anyway. So that heter that it's nisa achila, this is what stands in its way. That since you extracted it in order to use it to grow more stem cells, so it's not it doesn't have a heter of nisa achila. So these are the three heterim that it's not nearly nayim, and the counter argument is Rav Chaim, Rav Shlomo Zalman, whatever he means about nearly nayim by kilayim. And the second argument is that it's batal, and the counter argument is that it's a davar maimed, and there's no zev garim because the other elements are not really garmin. And the third argument is that it's nisa achila. So the argument is that it's since you're using it as a ingredient, so it's like coffee or it's like sourdough. You use it. That's what it's set up for. We're going to see. I tell you, this is going to be a big problem if we can't get a consensus among the Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael. It's really going to be a big mess because you're going to have half of the population eating the meat, and the other half. Do you know what? There'll be even a problem with burials because the halacha is you're not supposed to bury a person, somebody who doesn't keep the Torah. You're not supposed to bury somebody who's shomer mitzvahs. Harry's already shaking his head. You can't bury somebody. The Gemara says that even though ain't sechal isser, but the isser is there. It's just that there's no malchus. So and the Gemara says, "My nafkamina cover ben rishayim ugurim." You have two people, and one guy did two isurim. One guy only did one isur, so you don't bury the guy that did one isur next to the guy that did two isurim. So now, when it comes time to take somebody to the cemetery, so the guy in charge of the cemetery, you're going to say, did he eat cultured meat? Okay, you can't come to the cemetery because this cemetery is for tzaddikim that didn't eat cultured meat.
Wouldn't that be like but if he ate cultured meat based on his rabbanim, wouldn't that be?
Okay, so now you're getting into a good question. Then it could be that we'll have a heter for him to be buried because that's svara.
People who eat tetrachira.
That I told you there was there's a tshuva from the Ksav Sofer. The Ksav Sofer says that there's no lifnei iver. If you give somebody isser, if you hold it's osir, but he holds his mutter, and he holds mutter based on his poskim, there's no lifnei iver because elu divkim chayim. So you have your poskim, he has his poskim. So for you it's osir, for him it's mutter. Even though it seems like it's not possible. If it's osir for you, it's osir for him. But it's not true because since Torah L'Abishmaimi, so for one person it's heter and one person's osir. So okay, so the people who want to be buried in the cemetery, they're lucky. They'll be able to make that argument that Betzalel is making that they had it, but it won't help them in their house because when they invite company, the people won't want to come, and you'll have to fill out a form before you. Did you ever like now to get into yeshivas? They ask you, did you ever have internet for the last 30 years?
Resume. We didn't eat cultured meat.
Oh, you're right. On a shidduch resume, we never ate cultured meat. Okay, I know it's gonna be a big mess.
This is all. If you start with kosher stem cells, and none of those are a problem.
What?
If you start with kosher
Yes, if you start with kosher stem cells, then you'll be you won't have this problem.
No,
The
we
only
have
thing
other-
is,
we have other
question is
problems.
whether it's parav
Shechita.
or okay,
Lots of
shechita will
different
come into in a
kinds,
second.
right.
Well, the question is if it's parav or meat. But you're right, you win. Okay, last issue is the question about shechita. What happened? How do you get around the problem of shechita? You have to use live stem cells. You can't take stem cells from dead animals because the cells die almost immediately. So optimally, you take it from a live animal. So the live animal is it's Aver min achai when you take it. If you take a stem, if you extract the cell
An
from.
aver. Not even aver.
But it's Aver min achai. If let's say you just take you cut a little piece of flesh off a pig, so that besides being chaz or from a cow, it would be Aver min achai. You don't have to take a whole aver. If you take something from a living animal, it has maybe you don't get malchus.
If you extract cells from an animal, that's considered aver min achai?
Yeah, that's what they talk about. So
Without doing any kind of petza or anything like that.
yeah. So now the question is the way you get around the aver min achai is you have to have shechita. So how you get?
Stem cells from milk?
You could use milk, and Ramon said that you could make chicken from eggs.
Then wouldn't that get around?
That would be better, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if you can make a rib steak from milk. Probably not. I don't know. I don't know if there's stem cells in milk. Are there?
I think so.
Okay, so if there's stem cells, you can make anything. Anything that I don't know.
Extract it.
I don't know. But that's the question. If you take a stem cell. So now you took it pre-shechita,
Yeah.
and now you turned it into a rib steak. So what are you going to do? You're going to shech the steak? We never heard of such a kind of thing. So you can't shech a piece of meat. So you're eating meat without shechita. So Rabbi Genak wrote an article. You see, there's so much Torah you could write on this topic. That's what I thought is so fascinating, that it's like an octopus's tentacles. It's all over the place, and everything in Torah is interconnected and interrelated. And this is, you would think that the poskim, when confronted with cultured meat, they would say, no, I don't know. There's no Gemara about it. They didn't have it 2,000 years ago. It's not the case, because you apply the principles that you have in Torah and you apply them to modern situations. That's one of the reasons why Torah is called Torah's Chaim in the Shemon Esrei, because in every generation, it besides being relevant, but it also you're able to find applications. So Rabbi Genak wrote as follows. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he says, he quotes Rav Asher Weiss, who says, what? Where was it printed? I don't think it was. I don't know. I don't think it was printed any place. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it was printed. Maybe I don't know. So Rabbi Genak says, "V'hinei imdino," where I have my arrow. "V'hinei imdino kabasar yesh layin ha'im ton shchita." If you say like Rav Asher Weiss, that's what he quotes Rav Asher Weiss. Rav Asher Weiss says that if it looks like an animal, it is an animal. And Rav Asher Weiss, remember, he brought a raya from, there was that piece of meat that Rav Shimon ben Chalafta was walking, and these lions were roaring. So a piece of meat came down from the Shema. 2 pieces of meat came down. So one piece he gave to the animal, and then there was one left over. And then he brought it to the base medrash, and he said, "You're allowed to eat this piece of meat." So he said in the base medrash that nothing tamei comes from Shemayim. But if not for that, if apparently if it would be davar tamei could come down from Shemayim, then the piece of meat would be considered. It was b'demus chamor. It looked like a chamor, so it would have been usher. So Rav Asher Weiss says, "Why would it usher? It's not. It didn't come from a chamor. It came from Shemayim." So he said because if it looks like a chamor and it smells like a chamor and it tastes like a chamor, it is a chamor. That's his rule. So the question is, so Rabbi Genak says, "V'hinei imdina kabasar yesh la'ayin ha'im ton shchita, ta'af shenasa mibasar shechuta, ha'chelik zeh me'olam l'nishla." Rabbi Genak wants to say, even if I'm not sure the mitzias, I didn't even know if you could use basar shechuta, but he says even if it would be from basar shechuta, but this cell you didn't shecht. You could argue about that because. That's what I thought. There's a rule that kol yotzei min hatamei is tamei, yotzei min tar is tar. So if you have a cell that was shechted, so maybe there's no isser for something that comes out of that cell. You wouldn't say that it came from a cell that wasn't
I mean, you shecht,
What?
You shecht an animal, you don't shecht it.
Yeah, but the shechita is chal on the whole animal. So
So
if you
exactly.
extract that cell, it's nishchat.
Yeah, so I don't understand why we're gonna I don't understand.
He's saying because that the shechita can only be chal on the part of the animal that was there when you did the shechita.
So after
But-
it grows,
After it grows, yeah,
No, it
you shechted it, now it grows. So it's not, you can't consider that the nishchat. So he argues, he says that what's the pshat in shchita? Is shchita just a mechanical thing that in order to be able to eat it, it can't be in the vegel. With shchita, it's not in the vegel anymore because it didn't die. The vegel is something that died on its own. If it died through shchita, it's not called in the vegel. So it's not called in the vegel, so you could eat it. Or is shchita echalos? Is it a status the Torah says that you have to eat things that are nishchat. It has to have a chalos shchuta. So he says, the im nema ketzara sheni. The behemish nishchat ein b'chan devela af baser hagadol achak ein devela the hagol mesa umehechit etzel eser. If you say that shechita is not a heter, it's just that it makes it that it's not an avela because it didn't die on its own. It expired through shechita, and anything expired through shechita is not called an avela. So this piece of meat didn't die. It grew from dead cells. So you can't consider it to be in the vegel. But if you say that you need a chalos, that the shchita is a mat, it has to be, you're not allowed to eat meat that's not called nishchat. And he brings a raya from Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva asks the kasha, Sharachon, B'shocha B'Shabbos, Lamai, Lamin Iya V'Lo Mahani. Ve'ein Malkum Kushazu, Em Kein Shchita Hu Chalos Heter. The Gemara has a famous principle. That if you're not supposed to do something, let's say you're violating an isser and using that, by doing the isser, you mean mekadosh anisha. We say yavagol mahani. It's not the chalos doesn't take place. So Yikveger asks that why don't we say that if you shechted on Shabbos, we should say that the shechita is not valid because the yavagol Torah you're not allowed to shecht. So you shecht on Shabbos, we say the shechita is not valid. So Rav Chaim says that kasha only makes sense if you say the shechita is a matter. So then you can say Yavagol Mahani. But something that's a Metzias, you can't say Yavagol Mahani. If the Metzias is, if an Avego is only something that died on its own, but if it was shechted, it's not an Avego by definition. So you can't say that if you did it, Go Mahani, because you were over an Isser. So what if you're over an Isser? But the Metzias doesn't change. But if you say that it's a Chalos, so then it makes sense that you could say Yavagol Mahani. Since the Rikveger asked the Kash, you see the Rikveger holds that it's a chalos. So he wants to say that so that's what he wants to say, that if you need a chalos, so cultured meat, you don't have a chalos shchita because it's only the whole shchita is only chal on the stem cell. You can't say it's chal on what grows. It's like a davar shel ba'olam. You can't say that it's chal later on.
if it's meat to begin with.
If it's meat, if you hold like Rav Asher Weiss said it's meat. If you hold like the Rabbanos, it's not a problem because they hold that it's not meat. Period. They don't consider meat either because of the three things I said we talked about. It's batal or it's not royal achila. But if you hold
But
it,
if it is meat, you're saying you still can't eat it, even if it was a kosher meat, because
you didn't shecht
Shechita,
it. You didn't shecht it.
Shechita.
Right, so that's the Rebbe. And I can say that
That's
that
the
depends on how you understand the din of shchita. If shchita is a chalais, so then you don't have the chalos on this piece of meat.
right.
But if shchita is that it's not called that when it died, it's normally it's in the vela, but if it died through shchita, it's not called the vela. So here it didn't die it didn't die on its own. It was dead already from the
It
shchita.
didn't die.
It didn't even die.
You take it from a live animal,
Right.
Why is that not true about every Mechai?
so it never died. What
Every
status
Mechai is
it?
also because Every Mechai.
But then why wouldn't this be also?
Then it's Ever Menachai.
Oh, Max talking about if it was it was
Shechted,
shechted.
or shechted.
It was shechted. I made a
was
mistake.
shechted.
He's not talking about if it's a live animal, then you have to contend with Eivim Menachai, and it won't make a difference whether l'chara won't make a difference whether whichever way you understand shechita, whether it's a chalos or it's a
You're saying it's taken from the nevela.
it was right.
The sample doesn't have a shem nevela on it.
Well, why does it have a shem nevela? He didn't say that. He didn't, what?
Then, if it was already dead. then-
No, if it's already dead, so it doesn't have a shem nevela because it didn't die. It's not. It grew after it was dead already, and when it died, it grew through shechita.
According to Google, it needs to come from the cells of a living animal.
Well,
Why not just
Well-
use
So
a
that's a
Ben
moot
Pekua?
point.
We don't hold like that, Google. Right?
Take the stem cell from Ben Pekua.
Well,
Yeah,
that-
that's
we
a
didn't get to
possibility.
that yet.
That's
We
a
didn't get to that
very
yet.
Ramon suggests that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I know that the practically speaking, I think you have to use a live animal. So then it makes the problem bigger. That if you're using a live animal, so then it's Ever Melachai. So then it doesn't matter whether it's shechita or zamat or not.
But Ben Pekua would work.
Ben Pekua would work, yeah.
Well, why
Okay,
would you not have an issue in Abraham and Achai from the Ben Pekua?
because there is no Isser Ever Melachai in Ben Pekua.
Okay.
There's only Marasayan,
Okay.
I think.
So the bottom line is.